Good morning, Venture Capital. This is Metagame, and today's episode is about how Connecticut has quietly built a hedge fund empire that rivals Silicon Valley's venture capital dominance. We're exploring the unexpected financial powerhouse tucked away in New England that's managing California-sized capital right from its tree-lined suburbs and historic towns. Everyone's obsessed with California, the unicorns, the mega rounds, the founders in Patagonia, vests raising Series B at coffee shops. And yeah, sure, California moves capital. But here's what nobody's talking about. A 35-mile stretch of Connecticut just deployed more capital per deal than anywhere else in the country, and I mean anywhere. $180.8 billion, 244 deals. Do the math with me. That's a $741 million average per deal. California's median? Sub $50 million. Connecticut isn't playing the same game. It's not even playing the same sport. So why does this matter to you? Because while you're tracking pitch decks in Palo Alto, the actual decisions, the ones that move billions, not millions, are happening in Greenwich, Stamford, and a town called Westport that most VCs couldn't find on a map. Let me paint the picture. Greenwich posted $43.2 billion across 102 deals. Solid, consistent, up 12% year over year. That's not a spike. That's a drumbeat. Union Capital just closed a $450 million fund in about 4 months. Oversubscribed, hard cap. In this fundraising environment, that's not normal. That's Connecticut. Then you've got Stamford, $38.3 billion from 41 deals. Yeah, it's down 18% from the comparable period, but 41 deals still moved $38 billion. That's $934 million per transaction. Stamford doesn't do volume. Stamford does weight. But here's where it gets interesting. Westport, 6 deals, $35 billion. That's $5.8 billion per deal. 1 town, 6 transactions. More capital than most states see in a year. Now, before you assume Westport suddenly became the next startup hub, let me explain what's actually happening. Bridgewater, 2 vehicles. Pure Alpha Fund 2 at $10.9 billion. All-weather portfolio at $9.6 billion. That's $20.7 billion from one firm's scheduled re-up cycle. When Bridgewater closes a fund, entire state-level data sets shift. That's not volatility. That's concentrated institutional power operating on its own timeline. And this is the part most people miss. Connecticut isn't competing with California for startups. It's not trying to. California builds companies. Connecticut decides where the capital goes before it reaches those companies. These aren't Series B rounds. These are pooled investment funds, hedge funds, PE vehicles, multi-strategy platforms where institutional LPs park billions and let managers deploy. Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai. Look at the top 50 deals nationwide for Q3 and Q4. Connecticut grabbed 3 spots, all pooled funds, all over $10 billion each. Bridgewater, Viking Global, all weather. Meanwhile, California's top deals. XAI at $5.3 billion. Databricks stacking rounds totaling $5.7 billion across the quarter. Ripple at $500 million. Operating companies, actual startups doing actual things, 0 Connecticut deals in the top 100 tech operating companies. 0. That's not a weakness, that's a feature. Connecticut is where LPs decide, California is where companies build. You need to know which game you're playing. Here's the strategic reality. If you're raising a $250 million pooled vehicle continuation fund of funds, secondary strategy, Connecticut's corridor is a top 3 domicile choice. Full stop. The infrastructure is there. The pension consultants, the fund administrators, the placement agents who've been doing this since before venture was a verb. CRPTF, that's the Connecticut Retirement Plans and Trust Funds, just published their 2026 pacing plan, $7.4 billion into private markets, $2.7 billion earmarked for PE alone, 1 allocator, 1 state, enough capital to rival entire venture ecosystems. They're committing $200 million to Briegel Sagemount's latest fund. That's not a bet on a company. That's a bet on a strategy, diversified across dozens of portfolio companies, with institutional-grade governance and quarterly reporting. This is how Connecticut allocators think. They don't pick the next Databricks. They pick the fund that might include the next Databricks, along with 49 other companies that provide downside protection. It's portfolio construction, not company picking. And if your LP base is Connecticut heavy, you need to understand this preference, or you'll spend every board meeting explaining why you're not more diversified. the AI boom makes this even more relevant. $202 billion in global AI funding last year. Where did it go? California captured the operating company rounds. xAI, Databricks, Anthropic, the whole roster. But Connecticut allocators are accessing AI differently. They're routing capital through AI-dedicated pooled funds, venture fund of funds, growth equity vehicles that target tech-enabled services. KPMG's data shows 67% of organizations calling AI investments recession-proof. Institutional LPs hear that and they don't think, let me pick a seed stage AI startup. They think, let me commit to a manager who's built a portfolio of AI exposure. So the capital that looks like it's going to California? A chunk of it originated from a Greenwich Advisors book, wired to a Menlo Park GP, who then deploys into a San Francisco company. Connecticut sees the aggregation. California sees the deployment. The Form D filing shows up in California. The decision happened in Connecticut. For fund managers, this creates a strategic question. Are you optimizing for the Connecticut allocator channel institutional, fund-focused, expects diversification, or the direct LP channel where family offices want co-invest rights and board seats? Both are valid. But Connecticut's $180 billion proves the institutional channel remains massive and underappreciated.
Oh, hey, friend. Do you like what you're hearing? Now you can have a ridiculously amazing podcast, too. Check out holler.studio to get yourself one today.
And there's a gap here, a white space. Connecticut allocators want fund mechanics. California produces company-level returns. Someone's going to build the bridge vehicle that captures both. Growth equity funds with continuation optionality. Venture studios structured as permanent capital. Rolled up micro VC portfolios marketed as private equity. These hybrids give Connecticut LPs what they want: governance, diversification, liquidity terms, while accessing California's venture upside. The strategic question isn't California or Connecticut, it's who's building the structure that Connecticut allocators will adopt at scale while deploying into California's best companies. So let's come back to where we started, that 35-mile stretch. Greenwich to Stamford to Westport, the hedge fund highway. It's not about exits or IPOs. It's about subscription closes and re-up cycles. The plumbing of institutional capital formation. Everyone's watching California for the next unicorn announcement. Meanwhile, Connecticut just moved $180.8 billion in a quarter through 244 transactions. That's not startup energy. That's the machinery that funds startup energy. Geography isn't dead. It's just reweighted. Proximity to allocators beats proximity to founders when you're raising pooled vehicles. And if you're still measuring success by deal count instead of capital deployed per decision, you're optimizing for the wrong metric. Connecticut doesn't need your attention. It's been doing this for decades while everyone stared at Sand Hill Road. But now you know. The question is what you're going to do about it. That's our Venture Capital podcast for today. If you learned something new, tap 5 stars and follow our show. Thank you for listening to Metagame.
Grep News. Thomas.